Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. I hope everybody is well. I need to take a big deep breath. Maya and I were unfortunately having some technical difficulties, and I think it's because we don't have super great weather here in Oklahoma. So apologies, but we got it up and running, and we are here. Welcome. If you do not know who I am, my name is Katie Gideon, and I will be the on-camera facilitator for this weekly setup social. And then I want to give a huge shout out to my co-host, Maya, who is always there and always helpful. I feel like I have the more dramatic technical difficulties with her involved. So I see the oh so subtle panic sometimes, but we are here. We are glad that you're here. Happy Mother's Day for those people who that falls into that category. And don't worry, this won't be heavily focused on that, but there will be some lovely nods just because it is that holiday for the day. I thought it was really fun when we came across this pick an award and when we talk about curating social media to make you happy. This is something that I did find on Instagram, so highly recommend it. They always have really great stuff. And yes, we give out all of the awards. I also feel like it's kind of award season with graduation and the education academic year coming to an end. So I always think of all the big awards assemblies, and everyone can have multiple awards. So if you feel like you did all of the above, own it. If you are just content with the one that you got, also, that's fantastic. So I appreciate seeing a lot of our returning socialers. Welcome. It is always great to have you back. And then, if you are new, welcome. We are also glad that you are here as well. And the way we define new is maybe it's new to a setup social, maybe it's new to a social in general, maybe it's new to Silk and Sonder, maybe you took a break for a while and are now back. So it's a second newness, a third newness, a multiple newness, or even if you are new to working with Maya and myself, we are always glad that you're here. We know that it can be a overload. So just make sure that you can participate in as much or as little as you want in the social. If you want to be in the larger group chat, just double check that default setting is to host and panelists, which comes to just myself and Maya. We're always happy to help, but we usually assume that you like to talk to everybody else as well. Same thing with if the music is a little too much. Don't worry if the slides are too much. We just want to make sure that we're setting those emotional boundaries as we go through the social because we're happy if you came just as you are. So, as always, be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions. We will most likely redirect a lot of your customer care inquiries to our team, hello@silkandsonder.com. And Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community. Be responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. That is why we say we welcome everybody. If you are here in celebration, if you are here because you had a rougher week, we are glad that you've come exactly as you are. But just definitely, if you need to take some deep breaths, if you need to walk away, we absolutely understand and we appreciate that because we want you to get exactly what you want out of this social just as much as we are all here together with our Silk and Sonder community to help get inspiration and or set up your particular journal for the week ahead. So, we are still talking about the theme of integrity for this month. And I know this one is also just a tricky theme in general. And I think it's because we can always look at through a different lens when it comes to this concept of integrity. And I think we do tend to look a little bit harsher on our past self. And so sometimes that's something we need to remember as we navigate integrity. And I came across these two particular quotes because I was kind of reminiscing and I was going through again the job interview and just kind of the particular mind map question, which you'll see. So I was wanting to kind of look into a little bit of these relationships. And I think these two I found interesting. Everyone makes mistakes, but only a person with integrity owns up to them. I feel like that is certainly one of those things, especially when you start to establish boundaries or stop some of those things. And I think it also comes back to a really nice tie-in to the self-awareness or the awareness that we talked about in April. And I think it's just kind of that understanding. But I also find that this is something that is very challenging to accept sometimes because not everyone has that same thought process. So it's one of those things I find this one just a little bit tricky to fully support and get behind where it's like I know that that's what I do. I'm the first to admit that I've made a mistake or done something wrong, but there's nothing more frustrating to me is than sitting across the table at a proverbial work meeting and someone else is not doing the same, and then I just kind of spiral a little bit where it's like, oh, this is so annoying. Why aren't you doing those things? Why is it everybody else's fault but your own? So I find this one is like one of those mental and emotional reminders that I sometimes need to use to get through the day. And then I appreciated the second one with personal integrity is important, not because it gets us what we want, but because it helps us be what we want. And again, I think this ties really well with the theme of boundaries, especially when you see the mind map that we talk about, because I think it becomes one of those things that you kind of have to set those. You kind of need to stand up for yourself a little bit, but you need to kind of, and I think especially I know a lot of our Sonder community are people pleasers, and that can be really challenging to do. But even I was thinking of a couple scenarios in my mind where I was like, no, it was tough and I didn't like it. And I didn't have to admit that maybe I wasn't the bigger person in that situation or the better person in that situation. But it was a situation that I found myself in, and I was at least content that I handled it from the best perspective that I had at the time. And I think that's certainly really something interesting and something I think that always needs to be a part of the integrity conversation, because I think it also comes to especially when we're in team settings or work settings and those type of things. It's again being able to set and kind of step away from a scenario and just be like, well, this is what I can control. This is what they can control, and those things won't interact because I do feel like I absorb a lot of that on my own. And so being able to kind of set those boundaries a little bit, or at least be aware that they are there. Because I do think when it comes to mistakes, it gets a little personal, a little emotional, and sometimes that can be hard to kind of step away from. But I think on the like reflection on the back end or the lens that we get to see in like a month or a year or even 10 years, we can kind of be a little bit more gentle in those type of scenarios and those type of relationships. So those were just kind of my thoughts this week on that. But I appreciate everyone sharing your thoughts and feelings in the chats, because I know this can be a little bit of a high emotional weekend, high all the things, but just in general. And I think that's the end of the kind of middle of the year, kind of all of those thoughts. And especially with the theme of integrity and kind of the mind map questions that we have. So it can all be just a little bit much, and that's okay. So we're going to talk about our integrity mind map. We're going to do our rosebud thorn exercise, and then we're going to move into those weekly setup pages. Woo! So please join us on your mind map. These are exclusive to the weekly setups, and we've already explored week one, which was really great. And I think it was a really nice segue. And then we now have the opportunity to dig a little bit deeper into the theme of integrity through another lens. And I feel like you could probably start. I feel like I've had some context clues, especially with the quotes that I thought of, that I thought applied very much to this week too. And I think it's also one of those, it just happens to land when it does. But I also feel like it's that kind of glimmer sign of like, okay, maybe you do need to sit and think on this for a little bit. And that's what I find really helpful with the mind map. So please join us on your mind map. If you haven't created one yet, just find a blank page. You can either use the back page, page 60, your first blank page, or maybe you repurpose a section in your weekly. So, week one, we did talk about the self and inner world. So, we kind of turned in a little inward a little bit for the integrity thought. And now we're going to overlay an outward component, and that's relationships. And again, you can define the relationships in any sense of that you want, romantic, friends, and family. But try looking at it from this lens. How honestly and consistently do I show up in my relationships? And I know that can be big, and that can be daunting, and that can be a lot. So I've kind of added some additional questions to kind of help a little bit. So again, you get to define the relationship, and you can be again the question we're looking at: how honestly and consistently do you show up in your relationships? And so you can focus on this as a whole, kind of think in terms of a light source. You are the light source emitting out. So you can think of it as a whole where your light is shining in that regard. Or you can focus on a specific relationship. So now you've got a spotlight. But I still want you to kind of think in terms of you are being the light source, and then you're looking at the relationship as what you are emitting. And so, is there something that you need to show up for? And then is there a relationship that you have made changes to and seen a change in your actions because of it? And I always like to kind of add that first question of, is there something that you need in order to do this? Because I feel like a lot of us have a hard time asking for help, even having to sit and think that we can't do it on our own. And that's perfectly fine. I am notorious for that. But I do sometimes find that that's a helpful thought of, well, if am I doing all that I am can, but do I need to bring in some outside resources to help kind of move it a little bit more forward because I've kind of done everything that I can. And as always, please be gentle with yourself on this one because I know it can be challenging. And again, those are a lot of these, especially when you're setting kind of relationship boundaries or looking at those, they are still somewhat sensitive. And I get that. For me in particular, I found really helpful when I started to set expectations for relationships because I had that epiphany post high school that you don't have to like everybody, everyone doesn't have to like you. But I think there's that added conversation that needs to happen of we may not get along, but we're either here for the same goal. So there was a soccer team that I was on in high school. There was a girl and she and I just were never gonna get along, even in the adult life and even when we were, 14 to 16. But we played really well together on the soccer field. So I think it was one of those we definitely put aside our own thoughts and feelings and had that main goal of we're here to do this, we're here to play these positions, we're here to play these roles, and we're perfectly fine for that. And so I appreciated kind of that established relationship of we were really not going to talk to each other outside of the 90-minute soccer game that we had. But when we did, we worked really, really well. So I find that's always one of those that like you have to have the conversation, you have to have the common goal. You may not get along, but you can put some certain things aside. Same thing with I had to have a tough conversation when I was later in an adult life, where it was, someone invited a group to a party, an individual that I did not get along with and called me, left a message saying that they were not going to come to the party because of me. And I felt like I did react because it kind of hurt my feelings that we didn't get along. But then I got more annoyed that she was going to blame me for not attending this party and take it out on the host who had nothing to do with that. So I had to have that conversation of, look, I don't care that you don't like me, but you're not going to blame me for this situation. I'm going to be an adult. I'm going to go because we're supporting this individual who has, taken time out of their day, prepped the brunch and all these really, really nice things. So I just found that a little bit challenging, but at the same time, very relieving because I think that was another one of those, how can I can control these things? Well, I can't control what they think of me, but I can control that narrative, which was you can either be the bigger person or you can throw your stuff in the dirt, pout, and not come. And at the end of the day, I will then proceed to tell the host because I feel like that's where I probably could have handled that better. It was like, I'm going to tell the host that I was the reason and that this was those things. So it was going to come out in a different scenario, probably. So it's more of like when I look at that, it became one of those like, you did the right thing, your head was in the right place, but you probably could have handled this other aspect a little bit better. So I know that this can be a lot. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this, but please feel free, take what you need from this. You can work on this now. You can work on this a little bit later as we have the week to go. But please feel free to share in the conversation, the chat, if you want to go along with that. We are just glad that you're here, and we are glad that we can look at this relationship lens through the thought of integrity. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I appreciate that. I know the mind maps can be very deep and very triggering and very thought-provoking and all of those things. But what I also love to see is even if you don't quite have the answer, maybe not ready to put the pen to paper quite yet when it comes to that. But what's special about the socials and why we include these kind of mind maps in these socials is because the conversation around kind of the thoughts on this. And I know, in particular, relationships can be hard. They can be the most rewarding and the greatest thing and the most necessary thing and kind of day to day, but they can be so many other things. There are so many layers and there's so much conversation around it. And I do find it a little tricky because it's really not something that we all talk about, I feel like out in IRL. But it is something that I think everyone has thoughts, everyone has feelings, everyone has gone through those, great positive ones. Everyone's gone through the absolute crumbling and upheaval of others. So it is certainly a universal topic that is not usually discussed. So I appreciate everyone being kind and honest in the chat. That's always nice. So please continue to keep having those conversations in the chat, even as we move forward through the social. That's what these are kind of really here for. So we are now going to do our rosebud thorn reflection. So please join us on that page in your journal. And this is an opportunity to kind of continue with the reflection. But what I've also found is I find this really helpful because I do find that I tend to get a little negative on some of the mind map questions, and that's okay. I just have that kind of gray wash over some of those themes. But it's always nice to then follow those up with the rosebud thorn because you get to bring back at least some sort of highlight, something that you can get excited about, but even still hold a teeny tiny space for the challenge that exists. So we're on page 36. And so the rose is going to be something that made you happy, something that went well, something that was nice, something that made you smile. For me, I went and got a pedicure. It was nice. It was lovely. I hadn't had one in a while. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was a good, just like little break. And what I love about them is I'm one of those, I always come with like a hardback book or a paperback book. And they'll always just say, okay, give it like 10, 15 minutes, just sit and read your book. And I love it when people give me permission to just sit and read. I feel like there's just nothing more satisfying of like, well, it wasn't my decision. Someone told me I had to do it. So of course I sat there for 10 to 15 minutes and read, and it was wonderful. An emerging opportunity is something that you are looking forward to, something that is out on the horizon, something that you haven't quite sorted out yet. I got to go shopping with my friends and family, and it was one I just hadn't been in a while. I got this new shirt. It's a very screaming pink, and it came as a set, but I don't think you're supposed to wear it as a set because when I walked out the door, my dad called me the Pink Panther. But it's always fun to have new clothes, new things to sort out. I'm still living out of a suitcase right now, so I was just needing a new rotation of things, and I enjoy it. And then the challenge, I always like to frame this. You can certainly refer to it as the negative, the downside, something that didn't go so well, the roadblock, the speed bump. I like to think of it a little bit more as what is taking too much time, energy, and effort from your day. And for me, it's the spam calls. And I think it's just because in Oklahoma, we're again heading into, the early stages of political advertisements, but they're relentless. So it's just been one of those, you run across the house, I feel like, because your phone is ringing just to have a spam number and, someone who wants to give you cash for something, and you're just like, ugh. It's like I almost fell. I took out a dog on the way just to see that this was not the phone call I needed. Excellent. Great. Thank you. But I did get my steps in, so appreciate that. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this. As always, we love to celebrate those roses and those wins with each and every one of you. Get excited for what is ahead, and then just send you the extra thought, love, and support prayers around some of those thorns. So again, page 36, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And please continue to share in the chat, even as we move to the next sections in the social. Don't feel like you need to stick to the pages we're working on. This is time that you've set aside for yourself. And I know some people will attend multiple socials. So certainly continue to work at your own pace. But we are now going to shift into those weekly setup pages. And so I love this now moment in the social where we can kind of take those rosebud thorns that we just put out into the universe, and now we can either leave them in the past. We can bring some of the thoughts and feelings and practicality forward into the next week if that is helpful, if that is the challenge we are looking for. Or we can just again have them they have their moment and now they need to depart the pattern and go do something else. But the way I always like to reframe or even think about the week ahead is what do you need this week? And you'll see there's a meme that I found a little bit later because I fully believe, and I feel like a broken record as well. I fully believe that May is just as busy as the holidays in November and December, because I feel like everyone, it's either a wedding anniversary, a wedding, a graduation, end of the year, start of vacations, kind of all the last minute planning on top of birthdays, and so a lot of other celebrations. So a lot of the time no longer becomes our own. And while that is great and fantastic, it just can be a little bit challenging, especially if you have specific self-care goals that you're working on, specific goals that you're working on. It can always be a little bit frustrating for that to be derailed for things that are outside of your control. So sometimes what you need is to manage your expectations. And you'll hear me say that a lot as well, because I do feel like attitude is everything. And I feel like there's a way to challenge yourself without kind of setting yourself up for too much of a failure. Because I know even in the Silk and Sonder app and the kind of conversations there, it's a lot of people are like, I just haven't had time to look at it. I've done the setup, but I only partially did it. I haven't even looked at it. It's already week 2. So I do feel like there becomes a lot of anxiousness around kind of working on the journal during this time. And that's okay. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself what you need. Sometimes what you need is exactly written on the page to help support all of these things. Sometimes what you need is some flexibility. So maybe you only do like a partial setup and then start adding things to it. Or maybe what you need is a repurpose of all of these things. Or maybe also what you need is a break from some of these sections. So there is no right or wrong way to set up your journal. There is no right or wrong way to participate in the Silk and Sonder journey. We just want you to help yourself, help future you. And sometimes that is just stepping back and asking, what do you need? And so we're going to start at the top of the page with this week I want to feel. And so you can frame it as a manifestation of what you want to do, an affirmation. I like to ask myself, how do I want to feel this time next week? So that I can use it as a little bit of a goal. And so sometimes it's your word of the year, it's your word of the month, it's leaning into the theme. Sometimes you have that aha moment in these socials, or sometimes you're like, well, I think it's going to be this, but I want a slight moderation. I want a slight kind of offshoot of it, or an ism as I sometimes refer to it. It's like, well, I want to be better, kind of an ism or an ish, better-ish. Sometimes you need a little bit clearer definition of a specific word, specific phrase, maybe 1%, 5%, less of something, more of something, maybe a different attitude for each day because it's a chaotic day and that's what you need. Kind of in the themes as we get to the end of the year, the day of. And then, as we say, pictures are worth 1,000 words, stickers are just little pictures. So maybe that's where the motivation is. So I'm going to play a quick song. But I always like to see in the chat the kind of intentional optimism of this week you want to feel, or how do you want to feel this time next week? And we'll see you soon. So now that we have that, and like I said, though, there were going to be some sprinklings of the nods for the particular holiday, but not totally inundated. So I thought that one was very appropriate. But now we're going to move into that next section. So this is that quote that I was talking about. May is just December in a tank top, events, chaos, and emotional instability. Because I do think that's true, and I will absolutely defend this and stand by it. When I was working in operations, that's what I always said. I was like, I would rather plan or schedule or find personnel during the winter holidays than try to find it in the summer because that's what sneaks up. And I find that quite eye-opening. But when you step back and you have that epiphany of like, oh no, it is just December in a tank top. So I've seen that, yeah, the Maycember. So we're going to start with those weekly major three goals, and I'm going to tie those into the to-do list because I do think this can be really helpful, especially as you're trying to juggle all of those Maycember, the Mayber months, if you will. And so maybe it's breaking down into categories. Maybe it's a mind, body, soul. Maybe it is a work and a home. Maybe it is a, inward, outward, everything in between. I also like the idea of alliterations. Our brain becomes fixated on alliterations. So maybe that is what you kind of need to help trick your brain to kind of get behind and embrace it. So the revisit, restore, and relax, I think is great. Maybe it is just the three things that you need to have accomplished, the big things. Maybe the frog fun fierce. I also like the idea is that you'll hear me say zoom in, zoom out, because I think a lot of in perspective, I come from a GIS background as well, which is a mapping application. And so maybe you need to zoom in a little bit and it's one specific um, goal. The one on the top right, I think is Quinn's. And it was one of those, it was like this was what she needed to focus on as we were heading out of the summer. But it was like, make this plan. And so the to-dos reflected that. So maybe you need to focus on one big thing. And I know we do have a lot of educators here. So maybe it's make it through the rest of the year, kind of that, or the last week. So I think there's also that really great idea of zooming in or even zooming out. And that's what's nice about the flexibility. Maybe you need three goals, maybe you need two goals, maybe you just need that really one big goal to help build around it. The idea of having those categories and then those weekly to-dos that directly support the category is always great. Um, Maybe it is. I know Nicole's in the chat. Hers is one is the top left. I love the idea of the mental and emotional reminders or the affirmations that you need. Maybe that is where you need to go to kind of help you to accomplish those to-do lists. So it's really nice to kind of have those hand in hand. And the one next to it, I think also kind of plays into that with the categories kind of listed as the to-dos, because the to-dos, oh, Lori, great. I think I've used yours last time as well, but I think it goes hand in hand with here are your categories. Here are those affirmations that you're going to use to support that, because maybe that is what you need instead of the kind of traditional weekly to-dos broken down separate from the goals. But again, you can always gamify some of those things. And like I said, maybe you just need two very focused points with a home and a work. So you have the kind of ability to do that. Here's the weekly to-dos. We'll talk about this section. I thought this was also an appropriate quote because we tell everybody you deserve the break, you read the book, you eat the snack, you slow down a bit. I know I sit in these socials and I tell you all of these things, but when I turn off the camera and step away, it's absolutely telling me, no, that's not for you though. So it's almost like I need someone else to give me permission to do those things. But I thought that was too true. So you can do the to-do list and it can be the traditional to-do list or it can be a to-do list. Maybe you need a little bit more categorized structure with the Eisenhower matrix with the do, decide, delegate, or delete. As I always say, I still keep with the alliteration theme, but I do not delete anything. I just delay it, which I think feeds into my procrastination. Maybe I need to change that perspective a little bit, but that is just what I have found to be helpful to me. Maybe you are having a buildup of the dread list or the things that are carrying over from the previous weeks, and so those need to be highlighted. So maybe it is a shift to all the things that you don't want to do, all the things that you're hesitating to do. Take inspiration from the not serious at all awards. Maybe that's what you need to kind of motivate yourself to do so. And you can do that with the Pomodoro technique, or again, categorizing some of those, the gamification. Maybe it is just a reshuffle of what you need and what you want, or the don't do this instead. Maybe this is where you kind of track your to-dos. So you're going to do a different to-do each day. Maybe you really just need a break from this. And so those reminders of don't forget, maybe it's the stickers, maybe it's a to be, maybe it is those weekly wins, and maybe it is just the not to do. So, as I think Nathania did, you have permission to rest. And so you can look at it from all of those different perspectives. But I would certainly love to see how you are either joining these two sections together, or maybe you keep them separately. But I'm always looking for new ideas and inspirations to kind of tackle these, because my major three goals tend to stay those mental and emotional reminders to get me through the week, which again is kind of the sphere of influence I like to do. So that one usually comes in, what can control, what can I not control? And then the to-dos tend to be for me a traditional to-do or to-da. And like I said, I've had to do some Eisenhower matrix when I'm just not motivated, but that's okay. So we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And I appreciated a little bit of the added conversation or added detail from the folks that shared about kind of what time of day they kind of really spend in the journal reflecting or setting up or those things. Because I do know that we have some people that are absolutely team first thing in the morning. We have some that are absolute team end of day. We have some that bounce around for different areas is the kind of the smaller chunks. I would say I am in a fortunate position that I do have quite control over my own individual schedule outside of work and some of those things, so I can kind of bounce around. But I have found that really helpful because I'm also one of those that's like, I will believe you, but I'm a trust but verify person. So even I will tell myself, it's like, well, why don't you do this in the morning? And you're like, no, 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 I'm not a morning person. I haven't started thinking those things. But I will shake it up and try it and be like, ooh, this was a good experiment. This was helpful. This got me back on track. But then it's also like, yeah, but you're not a morning person. So it's like a double down, like proving myself correct in that regard. So I think it found it is like a really good way to one, shake it up, add a new perspective, add a new time, add a new idea. But then it also kind of confirms like, no, this is your routine that you really like and that you're a little bit more successful with, a little bit more productive. But I find that if you need something a little bit different, that could be the subtle change because it's either going to be helpful or it's going to be a absolutely not, how dare you. I find that there's really no middle ground with that sometimes, which I think is always hilarious. So we're now going to move into that habit and activity section, or the habbities, as Maya has dubbed them in the past. And this is another one of those overlaying. Kind of, you have the things that you need to do, you have the things that you want to kind of goal oriented in the larger picture, and then you have how you want to feel, and then you bring in the habits and activities. And this is, I think, a really way to help manage some of those expectations, because for me these are things that you kind of want to do, that you wouldn't challenge yourself because they're either helping a self-care journey, a healthcare journey, whatever kind of journey you're on, or these are things that are truly something that are going to re-energize you, revitalize you. Those are the bright spots that you want to do. So you really want to set aside time for this. So I use this hand in hand with the monthly habit tracker. Those are the things that I want to do every single day. Then I add the lens of reality here. So what do I have to do during the week that could potentially impact my ability to accomplish the things I want to do every day? So for me in particular, this week is a little bit lighter on some of the like scheduled things. So I was able to schedule a few more classes for Pilates. So that falls into the move category. My library due date is for the books that I currently have is looming. So I need to prioritize that a little bit. So I feel like those are things that I find helpful. And that's how I manage my expectations with these. And sometimes you need to have some goals. So you can set those with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Maybe these are things you want to stop doing. Maybe this is more the mental and emotional reminders that you want to give yourself. Maybe this is a section you want to break from. Maybe this is like more of the like fun stuff, the like squishier things, the things that you want to do in between the margins. And just because there are 5 lines doesn't mean you have to do all 5. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 1, maybe it's a combination of. And you all know I love the visuals. And I also brought back the 30 days of an integrity because we break it down by week. So week 2, the theme overall is for boundaries. So if you just need a journal prompt or some sort of inspiration in these, I found that these are really nice to incorporate any time or day. And same thing with the Ambitiously Alexa Whimsy Challenge and then Falling in Love with Life Again. I think these are all really fun. And as I said, I've repurposed my expense tracker to kind of make it an adventure list or a bucket list just to give these things a little bit fun. And I found that they're just so things that we're already doing. And it's always just the little things. And you can kind of reframe a little bit, but it just makes them feel a little bit special, a little bit more idea on the productivity side of things. So it helps that part of my brain be a little bit more satisfied with my day to day, since I'm in a weird limbo position. So I am going to stop talking. I will let you work on this and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And now, as we almost reach the end of our social, I'm going to combine the next sections on the page that we lovingly refer to as the B side. So, the page that I don't always use, but they have great templates. And I already saw that someone has repurposed their meal plan. It was Michelle already repurposed her meal plan for 30 days of integrity prompts, which I think is already a great repurpose. And you can certainly repurpose the meal plan, or you can use it exactly as designed or something more as a real-time tracker. But I do like seeing people lean a little bit more into the meal plan for the soul. Um, and I feel like that is where this kind of falls into. Maybe this is where the journal prompts live, the reflection opportunities live, the daily ritual thoughts, the affirmations that you find in the Silk and Sonder app. Maybe this is where we turn off our brain and just have a moment of creativity in the doodles or the haikus or the poems, or even just pulling quotes, kind of, computer randomly generated quotes or thoughts or ideas as a way to kind of find inspiration. Maybe this is also where your kind of habit stacking is, or the things that you want to, like I said, turn it into a little bit more of that inward reflection. Then you have the mind body health plan, which can also be planned ahead, or it can be something that you track in real time. So I do like that these kind of have that either real time option or again as a planning purpose. And so maybe it's leaning into those. Alliterations, the today of. I know that if you have, I always appreciate the end of the school years, they have all sorts of different events, different days. So maybe it's leaning into a good theme. My family, kind of in celebration of Mother's Day yesterday, we had family over. We also had a big impromptu kind of croquet tournament because we introduced croquet to my 5-year-old nephew last week, and he's now obsessed. So we turned it into kind of a flamingo theme, so a little bit nod to Alice in Wonderland. So maybe it's kind of turning things into a theme as you kind of close some of those chapters, but it was probably a whole lot more fun than it should have been since it was just kind of equally dramatic competition of just us wanting to heckle each other. I love Nathania's who's in the chat with the I feel this and therefore I need. It's such a powerful but elegantly simplistic mental check-in. And I don't think we always give ourselves that true moment to sit and think, what are we feeling? What are we needing in that relationship? So I love that idea. And then same thing with maybe this is where you want to add some of those bucket list or ideas. I'm on the hunt for some thrift vintage sunglasses. I went to two places that I normally wouldn't have stopped in, which added to the adding kind of some whimsy into your life. And it was really fun. It was really cool to see the places. Route 66 is having its moment because it's one of the 100-year anniversary. So we're getting just a lot of really fun, interesting people who are doing that Route 66 drive through Tulsa. So it's fun to see them interact and see all these great places which I normally wouldn't have seen, normally wouldn't have seen, just because I kind of on a whim decided to go do that. Um, and then leaning into some more kind of thoughts and manifestations, just because I thought these were really pretty. But I think this also kind of sums up the weekend or the day quite well. So if you have any just still hesitation, anxiety, thoughts, feelings about it, I feel like this is a good one. And then you have the shopping list. So this can go hand in hand with that meal plan. It can help support that. I use the shopping list. Usually it gets a sticker or something like a fun doodle or a fun thought. I think I've only used it a few times as a shopping list, but it also becomes kind of the random packing list. What do I need in my backpack for the day? What do I need to kind of coordinate? And then I certainly use it when the meal plan, I repurpose that a lot for vacation packing. So it helps me prevent me from overpacking, but then it's all the like chargers, cables, cords, mouse, everything's got its own cable at this point. So I certainly have that there. Or you can turn it into a bingo board, affirmations. This is maybe the reminder. We love a good themed bingo board. It's always a great way to do that, especially as you move into seasons. You can always make it a theme. As we talk about the Maycember, maybe this is where some of those activities and milestones you have want to live there. And after this, I'm actually getting ready to go see The Wiz with my mom. So we're going to have a little nod to that, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody. Can you believe it? We have reached the end. Always goes by so quickly, but you have that very last section with the I am loving, and this is your opportunity to certainly put something fun or exciting, something makes you happy, that makes you smile, or something that deserves a little bit of a spotlight at the bottom of that. So while I do the closing, if you want to share what you are currently loving in the chat, we always love to see that there. But as always, we would love to continue the conversation in the Silk and Sonder app. You all provide such amazing inspiration, as you can see from the examples that are provided. And so we always love seeing those. And we know people also appreciate seeing those as well. But we certainly enjoy it. We have a couple other features that Maya is putting in there. You can certainly try out the AI coaching with Jenny. It's really great. They always are doing really fun updates, new interesting updates. Meha is certainly very pleased with the progress of this. So it's always a great opportunity to try it out, see if it works for you. We know a lot of people really love adding that layer to it. This is a copy of my playlist. I will include the link in the chat. And we hope to see you at future events. We will include that as well. And if you always either miss it for a scheduling reason, scheduling conflict, or you just need a social of some sort, you can use our YouTube channel for that. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know you're going to have an amazing rest of your day. I hope you have an amazing Mother's Day for all those that are celebrating. And for everybody else, I hope you have an amazing rest of your Sunday. You guys are going to have an amazing week, and we will see you very soon. Bye.